About a year ago, I made a video comparing the content updates in Splatoon 3 to those of Splatoon 2, judging them based on the quantity and quality of their additions, and overall just trying to make the debate between the two games a little more straightforward and less biased. You all loved that video, making it the single most popular video on my channel to date, which I cannot thank you all enough for. But in that video, a lot of you requested I do the same thing at the 2-year mark, and luckily for you, I had in fact already planned to do something like this. And since Splatoon 3 is now officially 2 years old, with Grand Festival right around the corner, or having already happened depending on when I get this video out, I thought it would be the perfect time to take a look back at the last 2 years of updates and compare them to Splatoon 2 again to determine once and for all which game had the better updates. We're going to be using the same categories as last time, plus one additional one I didn't think to include until now. And just to be clear, this is tackling just the content added via updates, not anything included in the base game. Only content released between July 22nd, 2017 and July 21st, 2019 will count for Splatoon 2, and between September 10th, 2022 and September 9th, 2024 for Splatoon 3. Nothing before or after those dates, with one important exception I'll get into later. I got a lot of comments about that in the last video, and I honestly just have to wonder, were those people, paying attention? If I'd included all the content in the base game, Splatoon 3 would have easily won most of the quantity categories. And even then, most of the criticism I've seen leveled at Splatoon 3 is based solely on the structure and quality of its updates. Including all of the base game content would have defeated the point of that video. There is one more major thing I'd like to address though, and that's the fact that I'm going to be giving 2 points for each category. Now, why is that? Well, I think it would be interesting to be a bit more comprehensive with all of this. So, in addition to all the points given for the first year of each game's content in the previous video, we'll be giving separate totals for each game's second year of content, as well as the overall totals of the last 2 years combined. Then we'll take all of the scores for each year, tally them up, and see which game truly had the best updates overall. Though, I should say I won't be recapping any of the points from the last video unless I have a correction to make, so if you want to see the reasoning behind those ones, you'll need to go watch that video. Anyway, with that said, let's get into our first category of the day, main weapons. Now, to set the record straight, I didn't include any of the DLC weapons like the Octoshot replica or the Order weapon replicas, simply because they're just alternate skins over existing weapons and kits. That being said, as I said last time, Splatoon 2 added 17 new main weapons in its first year, while Splatoon 3 added 7. However, when we look at year 2, Splatoon 3 actually takes the lead, with 4 additional main weapons compared to the second game's 2, which means that, overall, Splatoon 2 added 19 new main weapons, and Splatoon 3 added 11. However, that's without taking into consideration the fact that 8 of the main weapons added to Splatoon 2 post-launch were returning from the previous game, whereas Splatoon 3 had all of these weapons in its initial launch, leaving it unable to pull from this pool. And when we subtract 8 from 17, we get 9, just a little bit less than the number of main weapons Splatoon 3's updates added. Since the quantity is technically higher, I'm going to give the point to Splatoon 2 here, but I find it very interesting that if you exclude the returning weapons, Splatoon 3 actually comes ahead. As for the quality of these new weapons, Splatoon 2's second year has 2 pretty unique ones to its name, the Bloblobber and Nautilus 47. Both of these weapons add a new unique mechanic to their weapon class, the bouncing shots in the Bloblobber's case, and the charge hold for the Nautilus. And when you compare these to the mechanics of the year 2 weapons in Splatoon 3, I personally find the second game's much more intriguing. 3 added the Dowser Dualies, Recycled Brella, Decapitator, and the Wellstring 5. 3 of these weapons simply iterate on mechanics already present in their weapon class, with the most unique one being the Decapitator with its horizontal charge slash. So while I actually enjoy using some of these weapons more than the Nautilus or the Bloblobber, those 2 are definitely more unique, giving Splatoon 2 the edge in this second year. But overall, I feel like Splatoon 3 has had the better additional weapons when you take both years into account. Committing to adding a new weapon for each class was a really smart move, compared to Splatoon 2's overabundance of dualies and brellas, and the fact that they're all completely original rather than a mixture of returning weapons and brand new ones is a very welcome change, even if I would have liked to seen at least 1 or 2 more original Splatanas and Stringers. In terms of weapon kits though, the story's a lot more cut and dry. As I explained last time, these two games' sense of balance when it comes to subs, specials, and how well certain kits pair with their main weapons are so varied that I've elected not to do a kit quality category. However, for kit quantity, things are surprisingly close. In year 1, Splatoon 2 came out swinging with 37 additional kits, while Splatoon 3 barely managed to beat it out with 39. And just to set the record straight, Splatoon 2's number here is actually higher than it was in the original video, since there I neglected to include scope variants of chargers as unique kits, a decision I've since changed my mind on. As for year 2, though Splatoon 3 added an additional 26 kits in its final 3 seasons, it pales in comparison to the whopping 35 of its predecessor, nearly the exact same amount it added in its first year. This is largely thanks to 2 lines of gear in particular. First, the Kensa collection, added in the game's 4.0 update, which still has the absolute slickest trailer in all of Splatoon if I do say so myself, which brought along with it a ton of new kits. And then eventually we got Sheldon's Picks, a line that added even more third kits to weapons that already had 2. That's the major advantage 2 has over 3 here, third kits. While it looks like the devs were content to stop at 2 kits per weapon in 3, likely thanks to the much higher amount of main weapons, Splatoon 2 gave 33 of its 49 main weapons third kits. And it's honestly a shame that it doesn't seem like we're getting any of these in 3, because these are some of the most creative and standout weapon aesthetics in the series. Like, imagine if we got an Embers or Barazushi collection of weapons in the same vein as the Kensa collection, since those brands are unique to Splatoon 3. Ah well. In any case, adding up the totals from year 1 and year 2, we have Splatoon 2 coming ahead once again with 72, and Splatoon 3 relatively close behind with 65. Now here's a category that wasn't present in the previous video, special weapons. This is a major area I neglected, even though I alluded to my thoughts on if we'd get any more specials or not at the end of the video. I don't think we'll be seeing any new special weapons either, considering this game already has 17 special weapons, significantly more than the 11 that were in Splatoon 2 by the end of its life. Oops. Well, anyway, in its first year, Splatoon 2 added only 1 new special weapon, the Bubble Blower, whereas Splatoon 3 added 2, the Super Chump and Kraken Royale. I think Splatoon 3 definitely takes the cake for quality here, as Chump and Kraken offer clear use cases, with Kraken especially reinventing the most notorious Splatoon 1 special in a much more balanced manner. Whereas with the Bubble Blower, the consensus was very mixed. Some people thought it was absolutely broken, and others thought it was completely useless. It just took too much setup and planning to use properly in a non-competitive team environment. Moving on to year 2, both games added 2 new specials. Splatoon 2 had the Booyah Bomb and Ultra Stamp, while 3 had the Triple Splashdown and the Splatter Color screen. So while they tie for quantity, I think Splatoon 2 takes the cake here for quality with its 2 new specials. While the Triple Splashdown is fun and fixes many of the issues I had with the original Splashdown, it's not really that creative or unique. But the biggest issue comes with the Splatter Color screen. When this special launched, it caused a major issue with accessibility in Splatoon 3, with its visual and audio design giving numerous players nausea and headaches, and even after it was patched to a point where this was mostly fixed, the special is honestly just kind of useless. Whereas in the case of Splatoon 2, the Booyah Bomb and Ultra Stamp are overall much more creative and flexible in their use cases. Smashing the 2 years together, Splatoon 3 wins quantity by a single special, but choosing for the quality category is an even closer race. In the end, I've decided to give it to Splatoon 3, since here there's just one more special I actively enjoy using over the others. Now on to the other major aspect of the game's multiplayer, stages. As we established last time, Splatoon 2 added 13 new stages via updates in its first year, with about half of them being returning from the first game, and Splatoon 3 added 8 of its own, with 3 returning. In the case of year 2, the second game seriously backed off in the addition of new stages, adding only 2 new ones, the returning Anchovy Games, and the newcomer Skipper Pavilion. Splatoon 3 also backed off, but not nearly as much, adding 4 as opposed to 8, with all but one of them being entirely new. So the point for quantity in year 2 must go to the third game. Adding them together though, we'll find that Splatoon 2 still comes out on top overall, with 15 stages to Splatoon 3's 12. Honestly, if they'd spread a few of those year 1 stages out a bit more across the second year, I think it honestly would have helped that game's second year feel like a bit less of an afterthought. With the quality of the year 2 stages, Anchovy and Skipper Pavilion are both some of my favorites in Splatoon 2. The fan mechanic at Anchovy can get a little bit annoying sometimes, but the stage is still a blast with a decent variety of routes throughout it. And Skipper Pavilion, well, I'm just a sucker for the laterally symmetrical stages in this series. However, I honestly think Splatoon 3's stages are somehow even better, fixing a lot of the issues people had with the stage design in the game previously. Robo Ramen is a great callback to the stage design philosophies of Splatoon 2, Bluefin Depot is a classic from the first game that's redesigned in some really smart ways here. Marlin Airport honestly does the fan platform mechanic better than Anchovy, and Lemuria, again, lateral symmetry. So for year 2, the quality point absolutely goes to Splatoon 3. But as for the overall quality point, well, it was given to Splatoon 2 in year 1, but the third game's stage design improved so much once we got stuff like Ship Shape and Crab Leg. You know what? Screw it. It's my channel. I do whatever the hell I want. It's a tie. They both get a point for this. Now, as for the updates to Salmon Run, we once again have to look at the quantity of the updates between the two. Year 1 saw a landslide victory for Splatoon 3 in terms of both quantity and quality, really expanding Salmon Run into a core part of the game, as opposed to just the smaller side mode that it was in Splatoon 2. For year 2 though, there is one aspect in which they're equal: stages. Both games added a single new Salmon Run stage in year 2, Ruins of Arc Polaris for the second game and Bone Rattle Arena for the third. However, when it comes to Grizzco weapons, Splatoon 2 didn't add any more, while Splatoon 3 added the Grizzco roller. Finally, taking this in combination with the fact that Splatoon 3 added a bunch more exclusive content to it, including 2 new King Salmonids if you count the Triumvirate as a unique one, which leads 3 to come out on top once again in terms of quantity. However, I do think Splatoon 2 actually makes a very good case for quality here, simply based on the merits of its final stage. See, Ruins of Arc Polaris is still my favorite Salmon Run stage to date, while Bone Rattle Arena is, in my opinion, way too cramped and segmented for its own good. And I personally believe that well-designed stages are the most important aspect of Salmon Run. So, for the year 2 quality point, I'll be giving that to Splatoon 2. But for both years combined, Splatoon 3 easily clears it in both categories. Now, one of the categories we had last time was the modes category, which discussed the addition of things like Clan Blitz, challenges, and that sort of thing. However, neither game added any new modes in their second year, which makes sense. Unless you count the game's 2 major DLC campaigns, Splatoon 2's Octo Expansion and Splatoon 3's Side Order. However, these are both 2 massive modes that kind of go beyond the scope of this video for me to discuss. But there is a fascinating discussion to be had when you attempt to compare these games. So instead, how about we make that its own separate video? It won't have any effect on this discussion here, but I do plan to make a sort of Side Order versus Octo Expansion video at some point. So if you want to make sure you don't miss that, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to make sure you get notified. And while you're at it, maybe drop a like or a comment telling me which game you thought had the better update cycles and why? I'm genuinely super curious to see what people think now, as it seems like the popular opinion has finally started to shift in Splatoon 3's favor. And last 2 things, I promise. I've also got a Discord server you can join via the link in the description, and I recently started streaming over on my Twitch channel again. I'm doing this fun thing every Sunday called the Anarchy Challenge, where I attempt to clear an Anarchy series with every single weapon in Splatoon 3. So far, we've only managed to clear 1. But if you want to see me suffer through that, go check out my Twitch with the link below. Anyway, now onto the subject of Splatfest quality. Like I explained last time, I won't be doing a Splatfest quantity category, since they run on a pretty consistent schedule, and Splatoon 3 has had its unique big runs in the place of where some Splatfests would traditionally be run. However, the quality of the Splatfest themes is definitely a topic up for debate. And also, as I said previously, we'll only be discussing the North American Splatfest themes here, since that's what I'm personally most familiar with. Splatoon 2 definitely had some of its most iconic themes in its second year, with Knights vs. Wizards, Heroes vs. Villains, and Salsa vs. Guacamole being standouts. Additionally, this is where we saw the introduction of themed seasonal Splatfests, which gave the idols unique outfits and extra decorations for the plaza. These came in the form of the first Splatoween, with a theme of Trick vs. Treat, Frosty Fest with Family vs. Friends, and Springfest with Hare vs. Tortoise. In the case of Splatoon 3, this is where it finally seemed to figure out its Splatfest themes, with a lot less food-themed ones, and more unique and interesting themes. Some particular standouts here for me were the Instrument and End of the World Splatfests. Additionally, the second year of Splatoon 3 had a ton of seasonal Splatfests, with 4 of its 10 being themed. We had repeats of Splatoween with a theme of zombies vs. skeletons vs. ghosts, Frosty Fest with friends vs. family vs. solo, and Springfest with chicks vs. baby bunnies vs. bear cubs, in addition to a brand new seasonal Splatfest, Summer Nights, with Palace vs. Theme Park vs. Beach. One of those themes was a repeat of the original Frosty Fest theme from Splatoon 2, but given how much I liked the other themes this year, I'm willing to let it slide. However, you may have noticed I neglected to mention two major Splatfests here. Those, of course, being Splatoon 2's Final Fest, Splatocalypse, and Splatoon 3's Grand Festival. And therein lies the main exception to the nothing before or after this date rule. Because while Splatocalypse happened just before the 2-year anniversary of Splatoon 2, Grand Festival isn't happening until a few days after Splatoon 3's anniversary. And since that hasn't happened yet, at the time of writing this video, we can't really compare the two Splatfests directly, at least in terms of gameplay and how well they each send off their game. We can, however, compare the two Splatfest themes, which is what I'm making this exception for, so we can allow them both to factor into the Splatfest quality discussion. And in this case, I think there's definitely a clear winner. While Splatoon 3's theme, What's the Most Important, Past, Present, or Future, is definitely iconic, and the fact that each team corresponds to a different idol group makes it even more fun, I can't really get over the fact that this theme is kind of a repeat of one from the first game. Though that was more so asking which period you'd rather travel to if you had a time machine, it feels slightly unoriginal still. Splatoon 2's theme, however, What World Would You Choose? Chaos vs. Order, is much more creative, and at least in my opinion, this Splatfest had a much more fun aesthetic. It is a close race between the two though. But overall, I'm actually going to make a somewhat controversial decision and give the point for Splatfest quality to Splatoon 3, due to how much work they clearly put into improving the Splatfest for the second year. Splatoon 2's themes were a lot of fun as well, but there were definitely a couple of duds there, whereas Splatoon 3 didn't really have a theme I didn't like this time around. Overall though, when taking both years into account, I think Splatoon 2 definitely comes out on top in this regard. And now, finally, we're on to our last category, which is without question a sweep for one of these two games, and that's music. A few people got upset at me for including this category last time, but I'd like to explain my reasoning here. Music is a major part of the Splatoon series, and its developers have gone out of their way to create detailed lore and a distinct style for each of the game's bands, even beyond the main idol groups. For example, one of the bands we'll be discussing, Sashimori, uses ancient human recordings scrambled up to sound like the Inkling language. And that's even disregarding all the music from the idols that's crucial to the series' lore and all of that, so yeah, I feel like it's pretty safe to say it's important enough to have its own category. Additionally, I have a correction to make from the previous video here. Last time, I said that in Year 1, the two games tied for quantity of added music, but I forgot to consider the 3 new lobby tracks and Daybreaker Anthem in the case of Splatoon 3, which breaks the tie for that point and the tie for the two games overall from last time, meaning Splatoon 3 technically won the previous video. I honestly can't believe I let that slip, especially considering Daybreaker Anthem was revealed right as I was working on that video. But with the new inclusion of the special categories, Splatoon 3 would have won that year anyway. Back on the subject of music, Splatoon 3 absolutely wins for quantity again, in both Year 2 and overall, as its predecessor only added 2 more songs in its second year, those being Chop Screwy and Entropical by the aforementioned Sashimori. Splatoon 3, however, blows it completely out of the water, with No Quarters and Slopping Spree by the Chirpy Chips, Shifting Stars and No Plan Survives by new band Riot Act, Amalgamania and Sea Source by Sashimori, as well as some new Splatfest songs in the form of We're So Back by Off the Hook, and the iconic face-off between Off the Hook and Fire and Ice, Suffer No Fools. As for quality, it's, once again, not even a competition in my opinion. While Sashimori is my favorite multiplayer music group in the entire Splatoon franchise, and Entropical is my favorite battle theme in Splatoon 2, it's nothing compared to the sheer quality of Splatoon 3's music, especially in this second year. All of the 3 battle music groups in Year 2 have an incredibly distinct style, with Sea Source being my favorite Splatoon battle theme period, plus 2 new songs with Off the Hook, including Suffer No Fools, my favorite Splatfest battle theme. I think it's safe to say that Splatoon 3 takes the quality cake for both Year 2 and overall, even if there was a dud along the way. You know exactly what you did, Color Pulse 2024. I'll never forgive you, you dumb piece of shit. Now, at this point in the last video, I discussed what I thought the update cycle for the next year of Splatoon 3 would look like. But we can't really do that this time, since it seems pretty clear that Splatoon 3 won't be getting any form of major content past this point. I mean, the last catalog ended with a thanks for playing message as a splash tag title, so that's pretty cut and dry. However, there is one thing that we'll almost definitely be getting more of, and that's Splatfests. Aside from the fact that they changed the name of Final Fest to Grand Festival, I've also heard that there have been data-mined versions of Inkopolis Square for both Splatoween and Frosty Fest, both of which occurred before Inkopolis Square was added alongside Side Order. So whether these future Splatfests will be reruns of old themes or not, who knows. But I doubt we've seen the end of Splatfest in Splatoon 3. If we get more big runs though, I definitely expect these to be reruns of previous stages, and similarly, I don't expect we'll get any new tricolor maps past the Grand Festival, as those take a lot more effort to develop and implement. Finally though, let's tally up the points and see which game won overall. With 9 points, an extra half over its competitor, Splatoon 3 takes Year 1. As for Year 2, Splatoon 3 again takes the lead with 8 points. So, it should be no surprise whatsoever that Splatoon 3 takes the cake when you combine these 2 years, with 9 points to Splatoon 2's 6. The closest race, in my opinion, was Year 1. As though both games were consistently getting content throughout that first year, Splatoon 2 dried up pretty quickly into Year 2, only really having 2 major updates past that point, 4.0 and Sheldon's Picks. Meanwhile, Splatoon 3 got new content consistently into its second year, and even if certain aspects like main weapons and stages did drop off slightly in quantity, it wasn't nearly as much as the previous game. Combine that with the fact that the quality of Splatoon 3's additional content was either good from the start, or significantly improved throughout Year 2, and I think it's pretty safe to say Splatoon 3 had the better updates overall. But there are aspects that Splatoon 2 was superior in, and I think that's also worth acknowledging. All in all though, that's about all I have to say for today's video. Hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble about cephalopods for the last however long this video is. Y'all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye now.